Welcome to Newsbeacon, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. The Florida sun was high, casting a golden glow over the palm trees and the sprawling lawns of Mar-a-Lago. Outside, the world seemed calm, almost idyllic, as if nothing could disturb the peace of this exclusive retreat. But inside Mar-a-Lago, the atmosphere was thick with tension. A storm was brewing, not of wind and rain, but of politics and power. The ornate halls, usually filled with laughter and the clink of glasses, now echoed with the heavy silence of anticipation. Donald Trump slammed a news brief onto his polished desk, the headline screaming in bold print, "Canada restricts nickel exports in retaliation for proposed U.S. tariffs." The paper crumpled under his fist, the words fueling his growing anger. His face reddened, jaw clenched tight. "They wouldn't dare," he muttered, his voice low and dangerous, barely more than a growl. The room seemed to shrink around him, the air charged with his frustration. Aides exchanged nervous glances, their eyes darting between Trump and the ominous headline. This was more than a trade dispute, it was a direct challenge, and everyone in the room could feel the gravity of the moment. For Trump, it wasn't just about economics, it was personal, a challenge thrown down by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, a leader he'd sparred with before. The rivalry between the two men was well known, and now it was about to escalate. "We built them up! Their auto industry depends on us," he declared, pacing the room with restless energy. His words echoed off the gilded walls, a reminder of the deep economic ties between the two nations. "And now they're choking us on nickel? For our electric cars? Disgraceful!" The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Trump, never a champion of green energy, was now furious over a metal crucial for electric vehicle batteries. The stakes were high. Nickel was the lifeblood of the new automotive revolution, and without it, American factories could grind to a halt. Trump scowled at the trade data, realizing just how vulnerable the supply chain had become. But this wasn't about the environment or clean energy. For Trump, it was about leverage, about power, about not letting anyone, especially Canada, get the upper hand. The chessboard was set, and every move would have consequences. He saw Canada's move as a betrayal, a direct affront to his America First agenda. The flag outside fluttered in the breeze, a silent witness to the brewing conflict. Trump grabbed the phone, his voice sharp. "Get me the numbers. I want to know everything we import from them that we can hit. Every car, every piece of lumber, every drop of oil." He was already plotting his next move, determined to strike back. "They want to play hardball? We invented the game." His words hung in the air, a promise and a threat rolled into one. The aides scribbled notes, knowing the coming days would be anything but ordinary. The threat of economic warfare loomed large. Jobs, industries, and livelihoods on both sides of the border were suddenly at risk. The hum of the factory floor could fall silent, replaced by uncertainty and fear. This moment, hidden from public view behind closed doors and frosted glass, marked the true beginning of the crisis. Decisions made here would ripple across the continent. The news from Ottawa had lit a fuse, and the explosion to come would shake the very foundation of the continent's economic partnership. The world was about to witness a showdown that would test the strength and the limits of an alliance built over generations. To understand the firestorm, you have to understand nickel. Once a humble metal for stainless steel, nickel is now the backbone of electric vehicle batteries. High nickel cathodes mean longer range and lighter, more powerful EVs, crucial for mass adoption. Nickel also helps reduce reliance on expensive, ethically fraught cobalt. As demand for EVs soars, so does the need for high-purity nickel, making it a new strategic resource. Countries with rich, ethical nickel reserves now hold a powerful card in the global economy. Nickel has become a focal point of trade disputes and the race to dominate the future of mobility. The U.S. dreams of EV dominance, but its own nickel production is tiny. Canada, with its vast ethical reserves, is America's indispensable partner. Canadian nickel flows seamlessly into U.S. factories, powering the entire North American auto supply chain. Any disruption threatens production jobs and the green transition on both sides of the border. Nickel is officially listed as critical to U.S. national security. America's EV ambitions are tethered to Canadian mines, creating a delicate power balance. Trade friction over nickel is more than a spat, it's a test of North American interdependence. The Trump administration shocked the auto world with new tariffs. 25% on Canadian nickel, 10% on Canadian-assembled EVs. The official line Canada's subsidies gave it an unfair edge. Tariffs would level the field and boost U.S. mining. The real play appealed to swing state workers and project strength ahead of the election. Automakers, who'd invested billions in cross-border supply chains, were left scrambling. The tariffs threatened to upend production, raise prices, and disrupt the entire industry. The hammer had fallen, and North American manufacturing trembled. The era of seamless trade was suddenly in jeopardy. Canada's response was swift and defiant, sending a clear message to both its own citizens and the international community that it would not be bullied by its largest trading partner. The news broke across the country, dominating headlines and sparking heated debate in political circles and on the streets. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stood before the nation, condemning the U.S. tariffs as not only illegal under international law, but also deeply counterproductive. He called the move an attack on the spirit of cooperation that had defined North American trade for decades, vowing dollar-for-dollar retaliation to protect Canadian interests and workers. Ottawa wasted no time, immediately imposing strict restrictions on Class 1 nickel exports to the United States. This created a bureaucratic bottleneck at the border, with shipments delayed and uncertainty rippling through supply chains on both sides. Retaliatory tariffs were carefully targeted at key U.S. goods, striking at politically sensitive sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing, and consumer products. The aim was clear: to maximize pressure on American lawmakers and businesses. Canada argued forcefully that the U.S. move was a blatant violation of the USMCA, the very trade agreement painstakingly negotiated to ensure fair play. Canadian officials accused Washington of pure protectionism, undermining the trust that underpinned cross-border commerce. At press conferences, Canadian officials emphasized that their high-quality nickel was not a threat, but rather a vital component for U.S. industries, especially in defense and clean energy. They warned that cutting off this supply would ultimately harm American security and competitiveness. By restricting nickel exports, Canada flexed its economic leverage, reminding the U.S. of the deeply interconnected symbiotic relationship that both countries relied on. The move highlighted just how much the U.S. stood to lose by escalating the conflict. The decision was a calculated gamble. In the short term, it risked hurting Canadian miners and local communities. But Ottawa believed that defending its industrial base and long-term economic sovereignty was worth the sacrifice. The message was unmistakable. North American trade is a two-way street. Disruptions would be felt on both sides, and neither country could afford to ignore the consequences. If the U.S. chose to weaponize market access, Canada made it clear it would not hesitate to weaponize its own resources, leveraging its position as a critical supplier of raw materials. The dispute quickly escalated from a diplomatic spat to a full-blown economic standoff, with markets reacting nervously and businesses scrambling to adapt to the new reality. The once seamless, integrated North American economy was now a battleground, with factories and workers on both sides caught in the crossfire. Both nations braced for the fallout as uncertainty loomed over jobs, investments, and the future of cross-border cooperation. The world watched closely as two longtime allies and economic partners suddenly found themselves on opposite sides, their rivalry threatening to reshape global supply chains. The future of the continent's auto industry, already under pressure from global competition and technological change, now hung in the balance, with every stakeholder anxiously awaiting the next move. The line in the sand was drawn, neither side willing to back down, both determined to defend their interests, as the stakes for North America's economic future had never been higher. The tariff war's impact hit automakers and workers fast. Factories faced nickel shortages and new taxes on Canadian-assembled EVs, threatening shutdowns. U.S. and Canadian auto workers alike feared layoffs as supply chains seized up. The green transition was suddenly at risk. Tariffs made EVs pricier, slowing adoption and climate progress. Proponents claimed tariffs would spark U.S. mining, but new mines take years and face environmental hurdles. In the meantime, the most ethical, reliable nickel supply, Canada's, was being choked off. The trade war undermined the very industry it aimed to protect. Climate goals tangled with protectionist politics. The cost of conflict was measured in lost jobs, stalled innovation, and a setback for the green movement. The promise of affordable, mass-market EVs was slipping away. The introduction of nickel and EV tariffs ignited a firestorm of debate on both sides of the border, with emotions running high in political circles and among the public. The issue quickly became a flashpoint, symbolizing much more than just trade policy. It was about national pride, economic security, and the future of two closely linked economies. U.S. Republicans and several influential industry groups hailed the tariffs as a bold move toward industrial independence, arguing that America needed to reclaim control over its own supply chains and manufacturing base. "We can't build the future of American mobility on Canadian nickel," declared Senator J.D. Vance, capturing the sentiment of those who saw the tariffs as a necessary step to protect American innovation and jobs. Supporters insisted that while the tariffs might cause short-term disruptions, the sacrifice was justified for the sake of long-term economic sovereignty and resilience. They believed that enduring some immediate pain would ultimately strengthen the nation's position in the global market. On the other side, critics, including Democratic leaders and major automakers, condemned the tariffs as reckless economic sabotage, warning that such measures could backfire and damage the very industries they aimed to protect. Supply chain experts and economists cautioned that targeting Canada, a key trading partner, would inevitably boomerang back on U.S. jobs and consumers, leading to higher costs, production delays, and potential layoffs in the auto sector. In Canada, the response was swift and unified. Politicians from all parties and business leaders across industries expressed outrage, calling the tariffs a deep betrayal of trust between the two nations. The Premier of Ontario warned that the escalating dispute threatened to unravel a century of close cooperation, putting at risk not only trade but also the spirit of partnership that had defined U.S. Canada relations for generations. Canadian leaders emphasized that they were partners, not adversaries, in a global race for innovation and prosperity, urging the U.S. to remember the value of collaboration over competition. The growing rift exposed just how fragile North American economic integration could be, revealing vulnerabilities that many had long taken for granted. The stakes were enormous, not just the loss of jobs but the potential unraveling of a shared economic platform that millions depended on for their livelihoods and future growth. Suddenly the unity of the continent was in question, and the path forward seemed more uncertain than ever before. The nickel dispute is a fork in the road for North American trade. Decades of integration made the continent a global powerhouse. Protectionism, now on the rise, threatens to unravel that legacy. More barriers could mean a fragmented, less competitive economy, losing ground to Europe and Asia. Alternatively, the crisis could spark a new era of cooperation. A true continental strategy for EVs and critical minerals could emerge: joint investments, shared standards, and research. The outcome depends on politics, economics, and public pressure. Will the continent build walls or bridges? The choices made now will shape North America's future for decades. As of August 15, 2025, the final chapter is unwritten. Will the standoff escalate, crippling the auto sector and poisoning U.S. Canada relations, or will economic pain force a retreat and a negotiated settlement? One path: political pressure mounts, tariffs are eased, but trust is slow to return. Another: both sides double down, building redundant supply chains and raising costs for all. Canada could pivot to Europe and Asia, reshaping its trade ties. The best hope: this crisis sparks a new North American Green Alliance, joint resource development, investment, and innovation. Such a partnership could secure supply chains and lead the world in green tech. The question: will leaders turn conflict into opportunity? The future of EVs and the continent hangs in the balance.